Hello my friends, and a very warm welcome back to my painting channel. And in this video I'm going to be painting the iconic cover art zombies from the Resident Evil 2 board game. So these are two of the zombies that you get in the board game pack. I think one of them is from the alternate sculpt box, which I think is the police officer, because the other police officers don't have the cap. But what we're going to do is we're going to paint these up to be exactly like the original box art. And in this video I'm going to add a few little bits and show you a little bit of how I use the wet palette and things like that. So using a skin recipe that I've used quite a lot on here, we're going to use the beige red, basic skin tone, and the lighter flesh. And as you can see, I'm just placing these colors in the first dot, the second dot, then our 50-50 dot, as you can see. So we've got our original color, our half color, then our original highlight, our half highlight, and then our final highlight as well. So this is giving us a real cool mixture of different colors and tones and things like that. So this is normally how I prepare my palette to make sure that I've got the colors in place ready to do the skin tones and things like that. I like to mix these colors. As you can see, there's a little bit of water on the wet palette as well, which is fantastic because this is going to add to allowing the paint to roll smoothly onto the miniature and create this really nice smooth blend when we paint in the skin tones. So as we normally start, we're going to start by painting the skin. Now we're going to start with the base color, which is that nice beige red color. This is a great base color, and as you can see, I'm just going to paint all of the skin area. And as you can see as well, from the paint being in the wet palette, this is going to take to the miniature in a really nice, even, thin down fashion. This is not going to overload the miniature. This isn't going to paint too much onto the model and then reduce any of the details. Instead, this is going to take smoothly on, and this is going to allow us to keep a lot of those details looking nice and steady. So you're just going to paint all of the skin, the face, the hands, the body, the legs, all of these different things. I'm just going to cover all of the model in this nice, even, thin coat. So this is going to give us a perfect opportunity and the perfect base then to build those tones back up from. So once that's done, just add in a little bit of a flesh wash to this. So I've added a very small amount of flesh wash onto this. Again, this is a technique that I've used quite a lot on the channel. So by now you should be well versed with this. So I don't need to show you the entire process. If it is something that you really do want to look at and take your time, then please check out one or two of the other videos that I've got on the channel that have a lot of different skin tutorials on here, because skin is something that I know a lot of people do struggle with, but it's something that I do find very rewarding to paint. So once the flesh wash is dry, I'm going to go back to that beige red, so that base color that we've just used, and we're going to slowly start to build that back up. Now if we do make any mistakes and we get any of the paint in the crack like this in any of the areas where the wash is sat, we could just use a wet brush and just absorb that paint back out. That's the good thing with working with thin paint, is it's easy to manipulate, but it's also easy to fix any mistakes that you make as you paint as well. So once that's done, then we're going to use the highlight color, and as you can see, this is just going to slowly allow us to blend these colors and tones up. Now when it comes to painting things like the body area like so, it's always worth just painting them across the areas where you think the light is going to catch. So you don't have to paint the whole area, you just have to paint the areas that you want sort of the light to be catching on. So the muscle tone and definition on the body, it's better to paint the highlighting color and the highlighting tone a little bit higher up on each one of those muscles, because then that creates the illusion that the light is cascading down and creating a highlight or a natural highlight across the top area of the skin, while the underneath of the skin remains and stays just that little bit darker. And as you can see, we're just slowly building those tones up through the model, nice and simply, nice and easily. So again, this is something that I painted quite a lot on the channel. This is why I don't want to spend too much time going through this on this particular model. So it's just kind of showing you guys the brush strokes, the way that I use the palette and things like that. So just trying to mix up the way that I'm showing you painting skin on here, rather than just painting the same thing over and over again. Just giving you guys a little bit of a different kind of feel and a little bit more info as well as we go. As you can see, it's just about using that palette, using those highlight tones, and just slowly building up where you think the highlighted areas would be. So just picking, as you can see on the body area, on the muscle tone, just picking the top areas, so that means the light is catching on the top of those muscles, and it creates that illusion of light source and that three-dimensional look to the model as well. And it's a very simple way of painting, but it's really rewarding. As I said earlier, it looks fantastic when it's done. It's not something that you need to be afraid of. It's something that is really, really great to paint up and really, really fun to paint as well. So just show you a little bit on the officer as well. So whereas I painted the lady, just going to paint up a little bit of the officer just to show you sort of how that's going with him as well. The cool thing is with some of the highlighted colors, you can also add to making some of these characters look just that little bit more pale, where they've been not looking their best, where they look a little bit sort of run down and not at their best self, shall we say. So from there, I'm just gonna put a little bit of the pastel blue from Vallejo, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of bone white as well onto the palette, and then with a little bit of water, we're gonna mix the pastel blue together, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of bone white just to the side as well. So this gives us the pastel blue as a base tone, and then just this pastel blue bone white mix as a highlight. See how we can create highlights through the palette in a very, very simple way. Now I tend to use the cream colour to highlight rather than using white, because white can sometimes distract or absorb some of the colour or take some of the colour away. Whereas with the cream, you kind of get this more neutral sort of highlight tone, which creates this much more sort of, I want to say a lot more of a natural look to the model. So that's why I use cream a lot when I'm highlighting my models rather than using white or a straight white, because a straight white can sometimes, as I say, just absorb that vibrancy, absorb that colour away. So using the plain base sort of pastel blue, that's how we're going to paint the officer's shirt. This is going to give us a really nice sort of base tone, a really nice great sort of colour that will allow us to build up from. Then I'm also going to use black from Vallejo as well, trying to keep all of the colours nice and simple, trying to keep them to mostly as much of one brand as I can for this video, just to kind of show you guys that you can paint these things using a very nice, easy to get hold of set as well. Now with the black on the officer, I'm just going to paint all of the trousers, the shoes, his hat. I'm also going to paint his wristwatch, and there are also these little bits on the pockets of the shirt as well, which are black as well. So again, trying to stick as close to the original box art as we possibly can. So just keeping this nice and close when we paint in some of these areas, trying to be very, very careful now not to get this on the skin, and the same with the shirt, not to get that black across those pockets on the shirt. We're trying to be very, very careful here. The cool thing with the base colors is you place the base colors down and you kind of get this feel for the character, you kind of get this idea as to how the character is going to look. And then as you progress and as you sort of build the character up and build the tones up, it just sort of grows in character as it goes. And I kind of love that about painting, is there's a lot more to it than just adding a color here or there. You know, it kind of builds up as you go. So I'm going to use Dragonoff Nightshade now from Citadel. So this is just a nice Citadel wash. I've just got a little bit of water, a little bit of a wet brush, and I'm just going to add this darker blue color just across his shirt. And you can see now how much this shade is going to do for you. This is doing a lot of work without you needing to build up so many different layers. Just by placing this Dragonoff Nightshade, which is a nice dark blue color, across that pastel blue shirt, it's just catching in all of those different folds. So it's picking out all of the details without you having to work too hard for it. So then I'm going to move on and use a German grey color. So this is a nice this is a nice dark blue grey, as you can see on the palette here. I'm just going to mix this now with a little bit of water just to get this into a nice flow, and then I'm taking the excess off my brush on the side of my palette and using this sort of dark blue grey color. As you can see, the blue color is standing off that black already. We're just going to slowly build this up and pick out the details of those folds on the trousers. So cool thing with painting sort of things like this police officer is, although there seems like there's a lot of black on the model, you can add these little extra tones. So this light, not light, this sort of dark blue color, this sort of very soft sort of blue color, so that this kind of allows the character to have a little bit of tone and a little bit of character. Catches your eye on the model, but the model then isn't a flat black color. You kind of got a little bit more out of it, and that kind of gives models like this particular one a lot more character then, rather than just leaving the trousers and shoes and everything just flat black. Now I'm going to leave the shoes and the belt flat black, just plain black, and the reason for that is, again, it's going to allow those trousers to really pop on the miniature then. So instead of working too hard on the shoes, we're going to work a lot harder on the larger area, which is the trousers, the hat, things like that. Those are the bits that are really going to stand off the model, rather than looking at just his plain old shoes. And that's going to give us a little bit more of a definition and a little bit more of a colour sort of shift in those trousers. So I'm just going to add a small amount of pale blue grey. This is a very, very light colour, so you've got to be careful with this one, because we don't want this now to become too light. We kind of want this to have a little bit of a highlight to that grey, but we don't want that pale blue grey to be the major colour. So as you can see, by it being watered down quite a bit, by me just rubbing this across my thumb, you can see how thin this paint is. And the reason why we want the paint to be nice and thin is because as we build this up onto the model, we want to get that little bit of a highlight, but we don't want it to take over the model. It's better off to use a thin layer and then use multiple layers than it is to put one big thick heavy layer on and lose out on all of that quality and all of that nice smooth transition in colour. For this layer then, that's all I'm doing is I'm just focusing on the areas where I think the light would be. So mostly just across the front of the trousers, as you can see, just around the knee area and just up across the thighs and things like that, just to kind of build that colour and build that illusion of light again like we did with the skin. As you can see, I'm just using the very tip of the brush, and this is just a size 0 brush. I'm just using those brush strokes as well, which is another good way of adding tone, texture, colour and things like that. Just using those brush strokes to manipulate and control where we want the paint to sit on the model. And again, that grey tone now is starting to really show through on those trousers, allowing the belt and the shoes and things to really die down, and that's giving us that much nicer tone and definition that we were looking for. So once we've finished with the trousers, we're going to go back to doing the shirt. We're just going to use that pastel blue again. And now using the tip of the brush, as you can see, once again, we're just going to slowly start to build up all of those sort of creases, all of those folds. We're just going to build up all of those textures, just like so. Again, just using the tip of the brush, just to build up all of those bits. Trying to be as careful as possible not to allow the paint to go into those recess points. So we don't want the paint to go into the areas where the wash has sat and darkened the model. Instead, we're using this to build up the highlighting, just like so. And it seems like a complicated thing to do, and at first it might seem a little bit sort of daunting, but the more you practice, the better you become. So the more models you paint, the better you become, and the more sort of natural this will feel to you. So just keep on practicing, keep on painting. That's ultimately the whole point of what we do, you know, with as mini painters. We enjoy to paint. So as you can see, I'm just going to use now the highlight, so that mix that we made earlier of that pastel blue and the bone white, and we're just going to slowly build this up as well, and this is going to give us another nice highlight. So same as what we did with the trousers and the skin, we're just going to pick out the areas that we want the highlights to be. So we're going to use the tip of the brush to create that illusion that the light is catching on certain areas and on certain parts, just like so. And again, if you make any mistakes, just a very small little bit of water on your brush will allow you to absorb that paint back out, and then there's no mistake. It never happened. So yeah, just using the tip of the brush, as you can see, building up all of those highlights, and again, just picking and choosing where I want the light to catch on the model, and you can really see now how light and how vibrant some of those highlights are in comparison to some of the darker areas where that sort of Drakenhof nightshade has sat. So that's given us a really good contrast between the light areas and the dark areas, again adding to that depth and character. Once we're done with the shirt, then we're going to use one of my favourite colours. So this is Retributor Armour from Citadel, and this is a fantastic gold colour. It's probably my favourite gold to use. I really love this as a base colour. It has a really good property, a really good colour to it. But it's also something that you can work with quite easily. You can build up to highlight it, you can tone it down. It is a fantastic colour. And for this, I'm just going to paint his badge. I'm going to paint the badge on his police hat, and I'm also going to paint the one on his shoulder as well. Now you could be a little bit more sort of precise with this and paint that black first, then just add a little bit of gold and things like that. But for me, I'm just adding it all together like this. So I'm just going to use the bone white on its own, just to pick out the bones and the areas on the models that are sort of sticking out, because you can see the lady's got some of her ribs are poking through, and the police officer's got one of the bones in his forearm sticking out. So just going to use the bone white just to paint that in as it is. So just going to be nice and careful and just paint in that bone white colour, just like so. There we go, nice and easy. And then we're just going to use another little bit of the flesh wash. So as I said earlier, I used this on the skin. Now with this, I'm just going to use the flesh wash now just across that gold area, across those badges as I mentioned earlier. This flesh wash is going to allow those badges to tie down a little bit. It will pick out some of the detail and give the sort of gold a little bit more definition, and it'll add this sort of orangey tone, this sort of warm sort of colour to it as well. And once that's done, I'm going to use a leather brown. And we're going to move on and use this leather brown colour. This is an army painter colour. This is a really good middle of the road colour, and that's all I'm going to use this for, is just to paint the hair on both models. So we kind of tie in both models together. We're not going to paint one hair colour different to another. We're just going to carefully just paint this across the lady's head here. And we're just going to paint this nice and evenly. Again, just trying to be careful not to get this on the skin too much. Don't worry too much about making mistakes again. And then just around the area of the hair of the officer here as well, just down the sideboard and around his ears as well, just like so. There we go. You might have one or two little strands just on the front of his head there. Again, just trying to be careful not to get this on the blue. Now once all of that's done, we're going to move on and paint the lady. So we're going to use heavy red, we're going to use carmine red, and that's all I'm doing is placing these onto the palette in the same way as we did earlier. And we're going to use pure red from the army painter. And that's all I'm doing is, same as what we did with the skin, I'm adding the colours together and just mixing a little bit of water with them. And then we're just going to paint these straight onto the model. So we're going with the heavy red first. So this is our base colour. And the base colour of this heavy red is just going to cover all of the sort of top that this lady is wearing here. So again, we're painting this to look exactly like the box art. So we keep in these colours and we keep in the models looking very, very similar to the box art characters that we know and love. So these are the iconic ones. Whenever they advertised the original sort of Resident Evil 2 game in the 90s, they used these sort of models, not these models, these characters and the colours that we're using as well. So once the heavy red is dry, we're going to use a small amount of red tone, which again is just a nice sort of shade. So this is a nice red shade from the army painter. This is just going to darken, again, some of those folds and some of those creases on the model. So this is going to sit in all of those recesses and all of those creases and allow us then to build up from there as well. So there we go, we're just going to build up as so. Nice and easy. Trying to be careful again not to get this too much onto the model, so we don't want this to go onto the skin. Again, if you do, just use a little bit of water and you can pick that out, but ideally we want to be as careful as possible rather than get this on the skin. So once that's drying, or while that's drying, we're then going to use military green. We're going to use a medium olive as well, and we're going to use these to paint the shorts. So again, doing the same thing as what we did with the skin. As you can see, I'm placing my base colour, then my highlight, and then my half stop mixed highlight as well, just like so. This is giving us a good range, and by adding a little bit of water into the model, this is giving us the ability to sort of pick how much of a highlight or how much of a sort of darker point that we want. Adding that water, giving us this nice smooth paint transition. And as you can see, I had to add a little bit more of the lighter green into my mixed tone because I wasn't quite happy with how it looked. I thought it looked still just a little bit too dark. Don't forget to take the excess off your brush on the side of your palette, and then we're going to go straight in and paint this lady's shorts as well, just using this military green colour. Just like so. Again, trying to be as careful as possible. We don't want to paint this on the skin. We want to try to make sure that we get this just on the shorts and on the shorts only. Just like so. And you can really see these characters are starting to show through now. So the police officer's looking really, really cool with this lady. Is starting to look exactly like the character that I mentioned, exactly like the character that we know from years ago, from all of the artwork and from all of the promotion that they used to do and things like that. So yeah, we're starting to get those colours now, and it's starting to look really, really nice. It's an interesting choice to go with green and red and things like that, being sort of quite opposite in terms of colour tones and things. So it's quite interesting because it gives you kind of a different kind of looking character, so a different kind of colour scheme and things like that. So once the military green is dry, I'm just going to use a military shader. So this is just a dark green wash. And we're going to use this dark green wash to just cover all of the area of the shorts. And again, this is going to tie those colors together. It's going to tie in some of those details, show off some of the creases and things like that. It's also going to help to tie the skin color and the trousers together so that it doesn't look like there's too much of a break or too much of a gap in those. Just like so. So this is going to tie those colors together quite nicely and allow some of the shaded area, especially around sort of the stomach area there, just to catch between the shorts and the skin. I'm also going to use this military shader on the hair as well. Now this might seem a little bit daft or a little bit strange, being that this military shader is green, but it is a dark green color. So I'm using this just around the hair as well, and that's going to add just a little bit of a different tone and a little bit of a different color to it as well. So just creating that illusion of depth and things like that. So then we're going to move back to our red, and we're using our carmine red now. So this is our first highlight, the carmine red. And as you can see, we're just using this again, just across all of those creases, across the way that the folds are, and we're painting along those folds. So this is creating that highlight, leaving the darkness and leaving the shade where the wash has sat and dried. This has given us the opportunity then to really pick out some of those sort of highlight details and things like that. As we go then, we're also going to use the pure red. So this is the Army Paint, a really bright, vibrant pure red. This has given us the opportunity then, once again, to go over all of those folds and pick out our light source and see where we expect or we hope that the light is coming from, just like so. And again, we're starting to see a lot of this character and a lot of the tone and a lot of the definition really start to show through and really start to come through on the model as well. Again, using those brush strokes is giving us a really nice sort of character and a really nice sort of build to it. So you don't have to be too worried about the brush strokes and things like that, especially when you're using thin down, watered down paints like this, because they will blend and they will dry down in a really nice smooth fashion on the models as well, which is going to give you a really nice finished piece. It's going to give you a really nice looking sort of organic kind of blend to those colors, which is exactly what you want. You don't want to go too, like I say, you don't want to put just a big blob of the highlight on and then you don't end up with this smooth transition. You kind of want to get this nice transition to sit quite nicely on the model. Once the red is done, we're going to use the mixture. So we're going to go with the military green and the medium olive mix that we've done. And we're going to do the exact same thing as we've done with the officer and the lady's top. We're just going to pick out those shorts and we're going to paint all of those creases, all of those folds. We're going to bring all of that color back up, just like so. And then we're going to leave some of the brush strokes in between some of those creases and some of those folds so that that adds to the semblance of depth and things like that. And it adds to the way that the model is moving. So you're painting along the dynamic pose of the model. If the model is sort of shambling in this case, then you're catching all of those creases of the clothing as the illusion of the model is moving and things like that. So it's creating this character through brush strokes in a nice, easy way. And again, as you can see, I'm just using the very tip of the brush. Again, it's a size 0 brush. That's my go-to brush, and it is just about picking out all of those points, just like so. And again, with this watered down paint, it's going to blend quite nicely into the miniature, creating this nice, even, thin, sort of nice tone. So this is creating this really, really nice highlighted tone. So then I'm going to use the medium olive on its own, and again, once it's nice and watered down, you can really see that starting to create a nice highlight, a nice vibrant sort of tone to the front of those shorts. And again, with this being watered down so much, you can use multiple layers if you want. If you want to build that vibrance up and build that highlight up, you can go as crazy as you like, or you can be as liberal and as or you could be as sort of shy as you like with it. You can tone it up or you can tone it down, however you prefer. So we're going to make the shoes look really, really simple on this one as well, same as what we've done with the police officer. We're going to use a ghost grey colour, and we're just going to use this this really, really, really cool colour. So this is a great tone, this ghost grey. It is a very, very light grey tone, so it's not white. It's quite a difficult one to explain. It looks white on camera, but it's actually a very, very light grey tone. So it's a very nice sort of off-white. It's got a kind of very, very subtle blue tone to it and things like that, and it's a fantastic base colour when you're painting up white. From there, I'm going to use a very small amount of null nile. Now, I say a very small amount because we're going to mix this with a little bit of water. So I'm going to use a wet brush, then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the null nile because we don't want this to darken things down. We just want this to pick out the details. And as you can see, by this being a little bit watered down, you can see that this is not taking over the model or darkening it in any way. It's just catching so that we can see all of those details in this lady's trainers. And just like so, nice and simply, we're just going to run this across the shoes, just across these little trainers, and that's going to give us this really cool looking effect in such a simple way. Now you can build it back up if you want, and you can go back and build up those tones. That's completely up to you, but I'm going to leave the shoes as they are. Instead, we're going to go on and use a monster brown, which is a nice instant highlight. So this is the most natural highlight to the hair. And that's all we're going to do is just using the very tip of that size 0 brush again, we're going to start to pull out all of those different hair strands individually. Now again, you could dry brush this if you prefer. They're your models, you can paint them however you like. You know I love to say that because I don't think there's a set way of painting. I don't think there's a right way of painting or a wrong way of painting. I just think it's your hobby, they're your models, you buy them, you can paint them however you want. They are yours to do with what you want. So if you want to dry brush the hair, by all means, you guys dry brush the hair. All I do is I paint and I video painting and I share it with you guys, and then you guys are kind enough to talk back and share ideas with me as well. So for me, I like to try to pick out hair because I find that it looks really cool on the model when you do so. But as I say, you guys don't have to do that. So I'm going to go with a silver grey from AK Interactive. This is pretty much just an off-white, so don't be too worried if you don't have this colour because it is literally just an off-white. You could probably use white as well if you wanted, and that's all I'm going to do with this is just gently catch the edge of some of the areas on this that are kind of like leather or might be sort of caught shining. So like he's got a torch there or a flashlight depending on where you are in the world, and then I'm just going to add a little bit onto the visor of his cap here as well, just so that it gives an idea or an illusion of the sort of light catching just across the very tip of his hat. Now once all of that is done, I've added a matte varnish on top so the models are complete, and then I'm just using a small amount of blood from the Blood God. So this is a technical paint from Citadel, and what I'm doing here is whenever I use this, I always like to mention to people that with blood for the Blood God, less is more. It looks insanely good when you use it in small doses. I know a lot of people like to cover their models. Again, like I said, they're your models, you can paint them how you want. If that's what you want to do, you guys go for it. But for me, I find less is more. It is amazing when you drag the brush down the model and create sort of blood trails down the model and just add it into only some of the small cuts and things like that. It almost looks, it just looks so insanely cool. I mean, you could go crazy and just slap it all over the model, and that's fine, that's up to you. But for me, I really love how it looks when you've just got little bits so that you can still see the quality of painting on your model, but you've just got that little added tone of red, that extra color that just shows through. And I just think that control just looks amazing. So with the police officer here, he's obviously taken a bite, someone's had a chunk out of his hand, but I think what we're going to do as well, I think we're going to give him a head wound. So we're just going to add a little bit of this blood for the Blood God just up and around the eye socket, and then we're just going to drag it down the side of his face, and then we're going to drag this down his shirt as well. So like I say, less is more. Instead of going nuts and just putting loads on, we're going to control this down the model just like so. And that looks so gnarly and so crazy, where it looks like he's taken a head wound and it's just dripped right down the front of his shirt. It looks really cool, really cool. So like I say, less is more. It really does look amazing because you can still see the quality of the painting. Like I say, you can still see all that character and effort, but you just get that tone of blood and gore and things like that. So there we go. All in all, that is my Resident Evil 2 iconic characters painted up all in all, you have to let me know in the comments below what you think of this and whether this is a good addition to my Resident Evil 2 sort of playlist. Kind of running out of models to paint on the Resident Evil 2 now, so if there's any others that you'd like to see, just quickly drop me a message, because I'm more than happy to try to add more into the playlist. As always, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching, for your patience, for your positivity, and for everything you do on the channel. I wouldn't be here without you, so I really do appreciate every single one of you. As always, my friends, thank you again, and please take care of yourselves, and I will see you guys on the next one.